What's good, family? Welcome back to the zone. Today's episode, we are going to focus on the Dallas Mavericks, which is the team that has Chase Auguste, as is pronounced, on the team. So he's the second of the three brothers that I'll be playing with in this version of my league, which has the fictional roster that I've been working on. So like the last video, what we're going to do is we're going to walk through the players that are 70 and above. And then we'll actually walk through some thoughts as far as what I think about each of these players can do, as well as some of the background behind some of the builds. So with that being said, let's get started. So in our first video, I highlighted Chase and mentioned that my ex-girlfriend designed Chase and played with Chase for my career in NBA 2K20. Now, since then, I've changed the face. Since this is an entirely new world, I wanted to change some things that were weird about how he looked. As you can see, he's 6'7". He plays the small forward position, but he also has the shooting guard as a secondary position. And he is the top player on this team. Now, unlike Miles on the Pelicans, where he's the number 2 highest player on the team, Chase is the highest on this team. And that's partially due to the randomizer and the impact that it had on a lot of the players that were developed for this team. So you'll see that the next player underneath is going to be Steve Levins. And even though his overall is a 79, don't sleep on him. This guy gets busy, but I'll get back to him in a second. So with Chase, he's a 3-level scorer. He qualifies for 16 badges based on my career. And from what I've seen him do on the court is that he's lethal from a shooting perspective. As you can see, his inside, mid, and three-pointer are all A-minuses. But if we wanted to look at the actual value of those areas, you'll see that the closest is a 90, mid is an 82, and three-point is an 80. Now, even though it's an 80, if he's wide open, sometimes when he's contested, but normally if he's wide open and he's very selective with his shots from what I've seen the CPU do, he usually makes the three-pointer. As soon as he gets contested or if he tries to take a jump off the fade or a moving jumper, he's probably going to brick it. But if he's in the close and mid-range, buckets. Chase is not as aggressive as I would like him to be, considering his size, considering his abilities, but it's just tied to the tendencies that he has, unfortunately. Now, that will change once I play with him, but this will be the first time I play with him ever, so it should be interesting as we move along. Now, next up, we have Steve. So you'll see that he also plays as the small forward position, same age as Chase, but his overall is drastically lower. I think we're looking at a 4-point difference compared to Chase. So Chase, as you can see, is the only person that's going to be over 80, but even though Steve is a 79, he is still a threat. So Steve is based off of a 2K base that was also a small forward, also 7 foot. But the original badges he had was 0, and now you see he has 26 badges. One thing I wanted to highlight about Steve is that I watched him play, I want to say 35. Yeah, I watched him play 35 blacktop games, 1v1, and out of those, he won 77% of those. And that was against other people that were at this position. And so he's pretty much one of the dominant small forwards in the league based off of what I saw on the blacktop. Now, it was 1v1. In the 5v5, it could be a bit of a mixed bag. Sometimes he'll be aggressive. He's definitely aggressive on defense. But when it comes to offense, he doesn't score as much I would like. He definitely gets some boards. He could get blocks from time to time, but he's definitely not as assertive. But that was me watching the CPU play with him. I'm curious to see how things will be when I play with the team, just as I've been saying for the other videos, of course. But I have a lot of faith in Steve. He gets me hype when I see him on the court, and he's definitely a threat when he chooses to be. Next up, we have Neil Upshaw Jr. Neil is a unique character because there are many times I've seen him on the court and I get the impression that he's not going to do anything. But then when he kicks it into high gear, he's able to get a lot of his points on the interior, but he can also shoot, as you can see by the attributes. All of his shooting attributes are 80 plus. Neil himself, he is based off of Terrell Brandon from the all-time Cavs, who was 5'11", he weighed 180 pounds, and he was a point guard for this build that was used for 2K. And as you can see, Neil is not that. He's still a point guard, shooting guard per se, but he's taller and he definitely weighs more. And secondly, when it comes to the badges, I think I might have skipped that, so I'm just going to go back real quick. He has 10 badges, whereas Terrell had 24. And so from an attribute perspective, the randomizer worked out in his favor when it came to his offensive and defensive attributes. So for example, his post moves and post finishing all got bumped up by 30 points or more. But then the shot contest on the defensive side, it got bumped up 10 points. So it's at a 91 as an example. His lateral quickness took a hit, his stamina took a hit, so he often gets faded very quickly. But overall, he contributes, and from a sim perspective, he's definitely a beast where he scores very well. His points are up there, and he gets a lot of accolades, because I think I simulated 3 years just to see what things would look like based off of the roster I have today. Now, this roster is not complete by any means. I still have roughly 30 more plays to go, so by the time everything is said and done, the stats will change, especially since, yet again, I'll be playing with the team. From a tendency perspective, I would say only 2 of his tendencies were augmented, and that was his shot mid-left center as well as his shot mid-right center. But then the rest did take kind of a hit, but I don't think it'd be that detrimental. I think it's really a matter of Neil finding the right system for him. I think the same thing holds true for Steve, in that they clearly have talent. Steve more so on the defensive side, whereas Neil is more on the offensive side. It's to be expected given their positions, right? But I think if Neil had the right system, things might work out in his favor. Next up, we have Eddie Yao. So he's also a shooting guard, but he plays the point guard secondary position. So I have a feeling that he'll be backing up either Chase or Neil. I haven't seen the rotation just yet. I know I updated the rotation, but I haven't seen like what the breakdown is. But he is the last player that I created, stemming towards what I was saying before a few videos ago about how some teams are signing random players that were in the free agency pool that 2K created. So because I added him last, that also means he bumped down another player from the rotation, and I'll get to him later. But I don't have much to say about Eddie because I haven't seen him play just yet. I will say that from an attribute perspective, his finishing improved, his defensive and athleticism attributes took a hit, as well as his mentals, they took a big hit. And then his potential was a moderate increase. But Eddie himself is based off of a 2K base that was also a point guard. The build was a 3-level scorer. The height was 5'9", whereas Eddie is 6'2" and 178 pounds. He's like 12 pounds heavier than what he would have been. From a badge perspective, Eddie qualified for 14 badges compared to his 2K base. So I'm curious to see how things go with him. I may watch a few games just to get a better take on his skill sets, but I think the majority of the test will be when I play with the team. Now, next up, we have Duncan Webb III. And I will admit that Duncan surprised me when I watch him play the few games I've seen from the Mavs, in that when he turns up, like, most of his energy comes when he's on the opposite team's court. So what I mean by that, so let's say he's playing an away game, that's when you see Duncan really come alive. Like, his energy is off the chart. He will hush the crowd when he scores. He'll flex when he bangs on somebody, and I absolutely love it. He's probably one of the more expressive people on the court today. And then while I was prepping for this video and looking at my notes, I realized that Duncan's player DNA is actually Zion. And the Zion that I was using is the Zion that was in the roster back in May of this year. If you look at the roster today, it's an entirely different Zion. But the Zion at that point in time was an 81 overall, power forward, flat, just like Duncan. So the randomizer helped him in that regard. And Zion had 20 badges, 6'7", 285 pounds. So you see that from a height perspective, Duncan is the same height. He's a bit lighter compared to Zion. And then from a badge perspective, Duncan has 4 badges compared to Zion's 20. But despite this, Duncan goes hard. Now, when we look at the attributes that were changed by the randomizer, the driving layup took a hit. Now, that was me comparing it to the attributes of Zion in the latest version of the roster. Zion in the current roster is a 90 overall and has 34 badges. So, being that at this point in time when I created it back in May, created Duncan back in May, I didn't write down what the original attributes were. So if we compare Duncan to the current build of Zion, driving layups took a hit, post moves took a hit, pass IQ took a hit, pass accuracy got a bump, but it's net negative. His interior defense actually got a bumped up, and then his potential is a 94. So from what I see, he's a go-getter. He definitely likes catching lobs. He definitely likes post work. I don't see him take jumpers too much, but getting boards, playmaking for other people, he's definitely there. If I had to choose, he'd be one of the people that I would consider core to the team. So I would say Chase himself, as well as Steven, maybe depending on how things go for the season. If anything, I might keep Steve off the bench, but we'll see. This is just me speculating right now how things look, but Duncan is my guy. I actually like Duncan a lot from what I've seen, and I'm looking forward to playing with him. Next up, we have Jermaine Armstrong. And so Jermaine is the older brother of Judd Armstrong, who is part of the fictional draft class that came in during my previous My League session. Jermaine is based off of George's Niang from the 2020 to 21 Jazz. And the difference between the two players is that Jermaine is 7 foot, 279, dude is Brocky, compared to George's, who's 6'7", 230. George's qualified for 5 badges, whereas Jermaine has 6. So it isn't that much of a difference, but he did get a bump there. George's is also a power forward, small forward, but Jermaine plays the power forward and the center as a secondary position. Now, from an attribute perspective, every attribute that was identified by the randomizer was augmented. So pass accuracy got bumped up 28 points. Strength bumped up to 44, which is 93. That's why he's so Brocky, because I also matched the weight to the player's strength. So somebody didn't look overly Brocky, but they're weak. So we got rid of that. So his Brockiness is tied to his strength. Stamina, 95. So imagine a big brolic dude being able to stay in front of you as long as possible without any issues. He's a problem. Defensive consistency, 97. Offensive consistency, 87. So from what I've seen, he could be dangerous. I don't see it often, but when he does decide to turn it up, he turns it up. So I think he'll be a good addition to the team to play a supporting role, but he would definitely be a target to trade if needed. Next up, we have Brevin Ivy. So he's a shooting guard, 6 foot, 178, qualified for 13 badges, and he is in fact a slasher despite the small stature. He loves to drive to the rim, loves to get layups, loves to actually hammer it down on people. Now, if he was taller, had more weight, probably would have better contact dunks, but he does make an attempt. But nonetheless, Brevin is actually based off of Josh Hart from the 2021 Pelicans, who was also a slasher. Josh is a 77 at the time that I built Brevin, which was back in June. And Brevin qualified for 13 badges, whereas Josh had 7 badges. Now, from an attribute perspective, it was a mixed bag. The randomizer had a negative impact on the post hook. It was down by 9 points. Speed got dropped down to 30. Originally, it was 81, so it dropped down 51 points. Pass perception got bumped up to 85. Pick and roll defense got bumped down to 67. and then potential, it got bumped up to 92. So he does have potential. The issue that I saw with him initially was that his consistency wasn't there. And let me just look at that real quick. Because even like with Shannon Tarsuski, I wasn't understanding why he was off. Now, compared to Shannon, who had consistency of 80 plus, Brevin has a consistency at 65, both defensively and offensively. So that makes sense to me and why he didn't perform the way I would expect him to all the time. Now, from a sim perspective, he'll get his numbers together. But when it comes to actual gameplay, it's hit or miss depending on the team, probably tied to the coverage, probably tied to his confidence, or whatever other factors are in the game that I just don't know about today. But nonetheless, he definitely can contribute. But as I mentioned before, there was a player that I created last that bumped somebody out of the starting five, and Brevin was the guy that got bumped. So Eddie actually took his place, and as a result, Brevin's now coming off the bench. But I kind of like that idea because the bench needed more depth, and I think Brevin can add that for the team. So looking forward to seeing him play, and that's it for Brevin. Next up, we have Hugh Hendricks. Now this guy, Hugh is my guy. He likes to get busy on the court. So he's a 73 overall. He plays the 3 and the 4 position, 6'9", 238. Unfortunately, he's 29, so he's on the older end of things. But you see, he's a slasher, which means he likes to get busy, in my opinion. Inside scoring, A, mid, C-, 3-point, C. But I don't care. He gets busy. Now, Hugh is based off of a 2K base. And unfortunately for me, now that I didn't know I was going to actually go look back at these players to see how things panned out. But the only thing that I wrote down was that his original position was a shooting guard position. He was 6'5", and he weighed 195. But based on the randomizer, grew a couple of inches, put some pounds on, and he's now small forward, power forward. Now, from an attribute perspective, I only have the end result. I don't have the beginning because I wasn't thinking at that time back in June when I created Hugh. His offensive rebound was changed to a 61. Interior defense was changed to a 44. Block of 53. Shot contest 92. Pass perception 87. And potential 86. So when you hear those attributes, you're like, man, this dude sounds mid. He's probably trash. But from what I see him do against the CPU, as well as getting buckets on the interior, I've been thoroughly pleased with Hugh. Now, Hugh comes off the bench, which is perfectly fine for me because as with Brevin, he adds more depth to the team that I think the team needs. And so overall, Hugh is my guy. Hugh, Duncan, Chase is going to be my guy, and Steve. Those are my four right there. Now, next up, we have Leo Mirai. And so like Hugh, like a lot of the folks that I created at this point in time, this was back in June, I didn't write down what the attribute changes were, but I do have the original position. So unlike the others that were changed to a small forward, Leo was actually changed from a shooting guard, changed from a small forward to a shooting guard. His original build was 6'7", 237 pounds, and now he's 6'8", 223 pounds. Isn't that much of a difference, but his previous build was shot creator, and we can still see now he's a shot creator now. The only difference is he has 27 badges now compared to the 0 he had before, but oddly enough, his overall only changed by 1 point. So he was previously a 71, now he's a 72. Leo, when combined with Hugh, they are a good tag team on the court. They feed off of each other's energy and they definitely help each other out on defense. So if somebody's caught slacking, one helps out the other to get things done. Now, unfortunately, with the addition of Eddie, Leo is now a bench warmer. He's a reserve. He is not getting any burn thus far, at least what it says in the rotation. And let me just double check that real quick. from a rotation perspective, he was actually higher up. So he's still the 10th man. He's not getting any burn right now, but he's not in the reserves as I just mentioned. But he's damn near close. He's not getting any minutes though, unfortunately, when previously he was. So from when I used to watch these videos before we added Eddie, Leo would contribute on the offensive side. Defensively, he would help out. He wasn't the type to get blocks. He wasn't the type to get steals or anything, but he would definitely press his matchup to make sure that they didn't score very easily, and that's very helpful. So I will probably take over the rotational minutes and not do it automatically. So I'll dictate who gets how many minutes and when, and kind of build out what the timeline is. Because right now you'll see here that there's no time built in for Leo, and Rod Mcgee is getting a lot of burn. We'll get to him soon enough. He's further down the list, but I think between Leo and Hugh, they have a lot of potential. I don't know if they're built for this current system, but if they are, I'm definitely going to put them to work. But overall, I liked watching Leo play, especially alongside Hugh. Together they make a good tag team. We'll see how this goes during the season. Now, next up, we have Seth Bridges. Now, I have never seen Seth play, because I don't know if you guys noticed this, guys and gals. I don't know. Well, hopefully gals. I don't know if you've noticed this, but we have a lot of people at the 3 and at the 4. So me and then we have Duncan at the 4. We have Jermaine at the 4. Seth never got to play, especially since his secondary position is small forward. We got a lot of small forwards, a lot of power forwards. So as a result, I have nothing to say about him when it comes to his gameplay. Now, when it comes to his build, he was based off of Mario Elie from the 93-94 Rockets. So this build of Mario was a 72 overall, 3-point specialist, 6'5", 210, and the age of 30. Whereas Seth, as you can see, is considered a stretch 4, probably because of the 3-point shooting that he gained from Mario. He's 6'6", an inch taller, but 8 pounds heavier. Now, why do we care? Well, we actually don't care about that. What we care about are the attributes that were changed. So from an attribute perspective, 1 out of the 6 attributes was actually changed in a positive way. The pass accuracy was bumped up 28 points to 96, whereas the shot IQ went down from 71 down to 64. The interior defense got shot as well. It went down to a 38. His shot contest went down by 3 to 62. Defensive consistency dropped down to a 64, and his potential dropped down to a 68. Now, as I mentioned in the last video, just because the randomizer made a decision doesn't mean that's the outcome that 2K would assign. So in this case, potential actually got bumped up to a 71 because Seth's overall is a 71. And I'll just zoom in so you can take a look at him up close. This is what his fit looks like. Not a fan of the kicks, but like I said, I've never seen him play, so I don't think it'd be that big of a deal. Now, he may be impactful on another team. I may be open to trading him if that means he'll get more burn, because we're definitely overweight at the 3 and the 4 position, and we could probably use some more depth at the 1 and the 2. We'll see. We have Hayden Keefe. Now, with the exception of Chase and the 2 members of the team that were drafted, the rest of the team was developed back in June. So at that point in time, Hayden was actually, I think, our 3rd option from the 2 position. And so Hayden is based off of Zydrunas Ilgauskas, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. My apologies if I didn't. But Zydrunas was 7'3", for the build that was selected, which is from the all-time Cavaliers, and Zai is a center / power forward. So Hayden, on the other hand, is a shooting guard. He's 6'7", still tall, but not as tall as his build. And so, based on the changes that the randomizer made, his ball handle was increased by 35. His close shot took a major hit. It got hit by 56 points, down from 86 to 30. Pass IQ got increased to 88. Acceleration got increased from a 25 to a 65. Offensive consistency took a hit by 18 points, down from 90 to 72. And then his potential took a moderate hit from 88 to 83. Now, all of those things sound terrible, but they may not be once he gets on the field. Because in all honesty, I never saw him on the field. Considering we had Chase that could play the two, we had Brevin, and then we also had Leo Mirai. So unless one of these guys get injured, hopefully that does not happen. We probably won't get to see Hayden play, but maybe in the beginning, the first couple of games, I may give him some time just to see how he'll play on the court, so I can make a full decision as far as what the true starting lineup would be versus what 2K is determining what the lineup would be, because 2K does in fact have a bias towards height as well as overall rating. And so there may be some sleepers that could potentially provide some value if we give them the chance. Now, Adonis, as you can see, is a shooting guard and point guard as a secondary. He's another person that comes off the bench. So he is based off of Anthony Simons from the 2021 Trailblazers. Now, Anthony's position was point guard, shooting guard, so the positions have switched as primary, secondary. Anthony is 6'3", Adonis is 6'5". Anthony had 4 badges, whereas Adonis qualified for 15. Now, from an attribute perspective, I want to say 4 out of the 6 attributes actually got bumped up. So his post fade increased. The mid-range shot got murdered. It's actually a 27, which is why the grade is an F. His block got improved to 96. Steal improved to 97. Pass perception downgraded to 31. But the potential is a 99. Now, I've never seen Adonis play. So he's in the same ballpark as Hayden as well as Seth. I may experiment with a few things just to see how these boys play in the initial games. That may put us at risk to lose some games, but I'll be able to make a better determination as far as what their playing abilities will be by doing so. As you can see, he's a 3-point specialist. If we take a look at his attributes, closest is trash, as well as the mid-range. 3-point is 87. So I think it's really going to be tied to the tendencies as far as whether or not he could actually contribute to the team. If he can, it might give him a few minutes as a backup. Worst case scenario, if somebody gets injured, we do have another body to fill in at the 2 and potentially at the 1. Hopefully that's not the case, but we'll see. And then finally, this goes against what I said earlier in the video about me only talking about folks that are 70 rating or above, but I have to talk about Rod Mcgee because he is a 68. He is the only center on the team. Now, if you look at the rotation, Rod Mcgee is the only player that is 70 and under that is in the starting lineup. So the way 2K sets the lineups, at least from what I've seen thus far, when it does things automatically, right? It first looks at the position, right? If you don't meet the position requirements, it looks at the height. If you don't meet the height requirements, it also looks at the overall. And so in this case, in normal circumstances, if we didn't have a center, 2K probably would have put somebody at the power forward or at the small forward into the 5 position if the height made sense. But being that Rod is a player that is actually tagged as a center, as a primary, he was placed in the starting 5 as the center, but he could also play the 4. Now, when I've seen Rod play, I've been happy with Rod, especially when it comes to his interior playing. So let's just take a deeper dive into Rod. He is based off of a 2K base. So originally his position was supposed to be a point guard, shooting guard, 3-level scorer, height was 6'3", 193, and he had 0 badges. Now, after the randomizer did its work, free throw got downgraded to 28, which does hurt. So if he gets to the line, which he has in a few instances, he's not going to be able to get you those extra points. His ball handle is a 70, shot IQ 84, steal 86, pass perception 63, and potential is a 75 based on the attribute changes. His tendencies are a mixed bag from what was changed by the randomizer, but a lot of the times he will take a driving layup, which is how he's able to draw contact and get to the line. But from a defensive perspective, let's just take a look. So his rebound isn't that great. Interior, perimeter, not that great as well. Block isn't that great, but he is tall. He's 6'11", so he could probably just get in the way since he will contest the shots on average. And his steal is pretty good. And so when I saw the 68 overall, I was a bit on the fence, thinking like, oh, why they put him in the starting five. But I will say he does contribute. He's not going to be a superstar or a Hall of Famer, but he'll be able to contribute to any team that he's on simply because of the size and his ability to take shots. Now, it's average, but he can make those shots if he's open. But I wanted to highlight Rod mainly because, one, I was surprised. I didn't expect much from him, and he pleasantly surprised me. And hopefully we could develop him into something more. Granted, his potential is only a 75, and right now his overall is 68. So he has potential to grow. We'll just see whether or not he actually does. And that will do it for the Mavs. Now, this is not the full list of players. We do have two other players on the team that I did not highlight, mainly because of their low overall. I will stick to it since Rod was a special case. But if you like the video, please leave a like. If you want to see more content like this, please subscribe. We're getting close to the date, man. I'm almost done with completing the roster. There are some players that I have in mind that I want to include. There are other players that I still need to develop for a few teams, but we are getting there. And come October 19th will be the first day of the season. And so I appreciate your time. Thank you for watching the full video. If you made it this far, leave Rod Mcgee as a sleeper in the comments if you made it this far. But yet again, I appreciate your time. I'll see you next time. Later.